So we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Museum Moments. This is Ellie Gettinger from Jewish Museum Milwaukee. And this is our beginning of a new week of celebrating the museum itself. The museum was born, as it were, in 2008. On April 28th. That's our birthday. And so this is our bat mitzvah year. So in thinking about that, I thought this would be an excellent time to explore the concept of bat mitzvah and what it means to be bat mitzvah. And to do that exploration, I brought in a fabulous historian. Her name is Annie Polland. She is a Milwaukee native, Hillel graduate, and she is the director of the American Jewish Historical Society. And she's been the education director at the Tenement Museum. She was the director of the Eldridge Street Synagogue. She has tremendous kind of grounding in Jewish American history. And I'm really excited to explore the ideas of bat mitzvah with her. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Annie into my basement.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back in Milwaukee in a way.
And it's nice to be in New York at the same time. It's amazing, the power of modern technology.
Yes.
So Annie, in thinking, bat mitzvah is this kind of strange concept that, first of all, in the Torah, there's no statement that when you're 12, if you're a girl, or when you're 13, if you're a boy, that's adulthood. This is all Talmudic that comes in. And it's kind of a question mark, too, because adulthood in the Torah is like 20. But there's this sense that with 12 or 13 for boys, that it's an age in which you can make decisions. And it's an age when you should have some sort of moral clarity that starts emerging. And the decision is that girls, because we mature so much faster, that we have that kind of moral clarity at 12 as opposed to 13. So as we embark on this year, I think there's this fascinating story. We're 98 years after the first bat mitzvah, and it's become widespread as a tradition. What leads to this kind of implementation of a new ritual in Judaism to have this kind of precedence?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's so nice to be with the Jewish Museum, and I want to say Mazel Tov on your bat mitzvah. I think that the Jewish Museum in Milwaukee is just fabulous. I love going to exhibits there, and every time I'm home in Milwaukee, we go see something. And also my mom is always telling me about what's going on, and just like really, really fabulous stuff. So thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing. And I love being able to learn about Milwaukee and Jewish history when I'm there. In terms of the bat mitzvah and why it happens and how it's become what it is today, I think so much of that is just this general idea that there has never been as much opportunity or freedom for women other than in America, really, and also for Jews. So that there's this kind of thing coming together where America is a place where Jews have more freedom than they've ever had before, more opportunities. And they're also seeing that women are in more public roles and things like that. So it's this kind of coming together of both opportunities for women and opportunities for Jews that I think in short lead to the bat mitzvah.
So the first bat mitzvah was Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan's daughter, Judith. And it was in March 1922. And it has, Kaplan has some ties to your former museum, the Eldridge Street Museum, Eldridge Street Synagogue. How do you think his kind of grounding, what are the things that are kind of pushing him to think about the fact that girls need a ritual as well?
Yeah, no, great question. And so Mordechai Kaplan he became a bar mitzvah at the Eldridge Street Synagogue, which was in Hebrew known as Kahaladat Yeshurin. It's located on Eldridge Street. You can see it today. There's a congregation, but also it's a museum, so you can go in and walk around. And he, even in his memoir, recalls visiting it later and going into the base medrash, the area where people would study. The lower level was where people studied. And he remembered seeing the seat where he would sit with his father and learn together with his father. So Mordechai Kaplan grows up on the Lower East Side, is immersed in this Jewish world. His father is a rabbinical scholar. He serves as a judge in a rabbinical court of Jacob Joseph, who is known as the chief rabbi of New York. and he becomes bar mitzvah in, I think, 1894 at Aldred Street. But I think what's really important to know about Mordechai Kaplan is that pretty early on, even though his parents were sending him to a Jewish, what would be, I guess we will call now a Jewish day school, he was like, no, I need to go to public school. Like, I need to go to public school in order to understand what it is to be an American. And so he went to public school because he knew that, like, being American at the time, that was so important. So Mordechai Kaplan going to public school would mean that he's going to be taught by women teachers, Irish teachers, in some events, American Jewish women who had come from an earlier generation, perhaps, but a lot of Irish women, female teachers in the New York City public school system. And so the immigrant population. What's that?
He's in a co-educational class at this point too, right? Girls.
Yes, some of it would be. Yes, some of it would be. And so, you're seeing this elevation of women in the role of a teacher. And I think that also has an impact on this generation. Then what also happens too is because all the immigrant kids are going to public school, most of them, I mean, the day school thing, it's so new that it's just a small minority of kids that are going. The kind of after school Hebrew school is being created too. So that takes different forms. It could be a tutor that goes from tenement to tenement. And it also could be a kind of like a Talmud Torah that people actually go to after school. And these businesses needed money to get by. They're relying on the tuition that parents are paying. And so some of them are entrepreneurial and say, we'll take girls too. And so girls now in America have an opportunity to have some kind of formal Jewish education. Now, some of this had started in some ways in Europe, but it really takes hold more, I think, in New York. And I think by 1918 or so, there's a study that shows that maybe as many as 22% of Jewish girls have some kind of formal Jewish education, even if it's, after school, whatever it is. So I think that is also happening, that girls are seeing this opportunity, and that grows. And certainly immigrant groups that had come before the East European Jews, the Central European Jews, for example, they had started to change their synagogue practices that allow women, instead of women being behind a curtain or in a balcony, they're put on the main floor, and there's kind of family style seating and things like that. So there's ways in which women are entering more public spaces in religion, and the kind of boundary between what men do and what women do is starting to shift, although there's a lot of things that are still firmly in place.
So we were kind of surprised. We were looking through and we found that the first bat mitzvah that we could find in the Chronicle, and this, we need to do a little more research to see if Congregation Emmanuel might have incorporated this earlier, but the first bat mitzvah that we were able to find in the Chronicle took place on November of 1927. It was a girl named Rita Piekarski. And it means within 5 years, Kaplan has started a ritual in New York, and it's made its way to a conservative congregation in Milwaukee, which I think, granted, we live in a world of like viral moments, but that is pretty fast.
It's pretty fast, especially since the bat mitzvah was not something that became like so widespread. So it's surprising to see that so early on in Milwaukee that this is happening. It's really, really interesting. I mean, keep in mind too, the bat mitzvah of Judith Kaplan in 1922 is not necessarily the same as some of the bat mitzvahs that we're accustomed to going to today. So I think in her memoirs or in memories that have been since printed and talked about, and the Jewish Women's Archive is a marvelous source on all of this too. So a big shout out to them. That like the night before, it was determined that she would read part of the portion in Hebrew, but not from the Torah itself, and that she'd lead some of the prayer service, but it was not the same thing a boy would do. Nevertheless, it was enough, she said, to shock, her grandparents and others. And later, when asked why Mordechai Kaplan initiated the ceremony for girls, he answered that he had 4 reasons. And the 4 reasons were that he had 4 daughters. So that it was also part of
why do you think, I think about, we're constantly in the realm of Jewish life thinking about how we're going to revolutionize Judaism, how are we going to change things up. And there are fundamental shifts that happen as modernity comes in, or things that happen when there's, the Reform movement signs the Pittsburgh Platform and, totally changes. But this is one of those rituals that has transcended denomination, that has become incorporated into broad Jewish life. Why do you think it was bat mitzvah was able to so firmly get a foothold in so many different parts of Jewish life?
I think just pretty simply because not only did Mordechai Kaplan have daughters, but other people had daughters too. I mean, there were women, there were amazing changes happening and opportunities opening up in general in America. I think because Jews as an group and next generation really saw education as a form of mobility, that Jews tended to be even more educated and seeing more opportunities for women, and that just all of that kind of came together to make the bat mitzvah seem something that needed to happen and that had to happen. But it's interesting to think about like all sorts of things that started and didn't really catch on, and it took a while. I mean, the bat mitzvah, right? It's really not until the 70s and the 80s that it becomes what you would say mainstream, right? And that's why you had so many women in the 90s and 80s having a bat mitzvah at an older age as part of this. They never had that, and now they want to do this to mark their Jewish scholarship but it's the 70s and the 80s, and I think that's also in response to the second wave feminism that happened. So I really, really think that with regard to why the bat mitzvah becomes so important, it's so much tied into the feminist movement in America, whether people saw themselves, quote unquote, as feminists or not, that just there's more economic, social opportunity for women, and therefore that makes its way into the synagogue.
This was a fabulous discussion. Thank you for celebrating our bat mitzvah with us. And thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed our museum moments, today is Giving Tuesday now. There are links all over our Facebook page. Please feel free to make a donation. And thank you, Annie. This was delightful. And please check out the American Jewish Historical Society. They have fabulous collections and archives and programs and really interesting things going on, especially around Emma Lazarus. So just to make a great pitch for them. And any last words before we go? Were you bat mitzvah?
Yes, at Congregation Emmanuel, March 29th, 1986.
Nice.
But I also have to give shout out to Hillel Academy and in particular Deborah Schmacken for giving such a wonderful grounding in Jewish education and a love of all of that. So I'm so grateful to Milwaukee and all the wonderful institutions that are there. And so thanks so much for having me. It was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much. And check us out on Thursday when we talk about actually the origin of the museum. Don't worry, it's not going to be super inside baseball. It's going to be all about how you go from a committee to a museum. Believe me, we'll make it interesting. Have a great day.